Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Bald Truth Review. Last week when I spoke to you, I commented how we were considering calling this programme Have I Got Some Truth For You? Well, after the events of this week's state sittings, I must admit I'm tempted to rename the show The Twilight Zone. And I say this because of the comments that were made by our Chief Minister, that's Senator Gorst, regarding the alleged separation of powers between the legislature and the judiciary. Chief Minister Gorst, under questioning from me, responded that he was proud of the separation of powers that Jersey had. The irony of it all, he said this looking up at the bailiff who was presiding over the sitting. The bailiff, who of course is the island's chief judge, head of the judiciary, and, as it happens, head of the legislature. Could it get any more absurd? Could it get any more Twilight Zone in tone? Well, perhaps it could, because what Chief Minister Gorst could have also commented upon was the issue of jurats. Now, who gets to elect jurats? States members do. States members can nominate and second individuals and put them forward to sit in Jersey's courts. Indeed, the last jurat elected was actually nominated by the other Chief Minister, many would say the real Chief Minister, Senator Philip Balash. I ask readers, how much more absurd could this all get? Now, the next part of the Twilight Zone state sitting that took place this week brought up the issue of super injunctions. For those readers who are not aware of what this is about, it's a super injunction being brought by 4 individuals in the Jersey court. 4 individuals bringing an injunction using an aspect of the data protection law. Now, the bailiff was very concerned that any names would be mentioned, which was a bit absurd in itself because UK MP John Hemmings had already named the 4 in Westminster. Nevertheless, under questioning from Deputy Tadyer, the Chief Minister continued this theme of absurdity and enigmatic answers. He told the Deputy that if he wasn't happy with the data protection law being utilised in this fashion, then he should amend it. The problem is for Deputy Tadyer and anyone else, we're not allowed to know which part of the data protection law is being used. But the other issue that we really wanted answers on is the fact that public money is being used in this case. 4 individuals bringing a case forward and public money is involved. How does this work in Jersey? Super injunctions. It's a subject that I believe is going to run and run. The next secret hearing is set for November the 5th. I can't tell you how I know that, but I do. So watch the next episode. Maybe I'll have some more news for you then. This theme of absurdity then continued in the States when we came to Deputy Mike Higgins' proposal to extend the redress scheme for historic abuse victims. Now, as if this isn't a serious enough issue, what we heard from the Chief Minister would surely shock any listening member of the public. The Chief Minister's been at great lengths to reassure people that he's fully committed to an in-depth, fully independent investigation into what went on in Jersey, in care homes and the like. He's trying to convince us that he's fully convinced to leaving no stone unturned, just as Senator Walker promised all those years ago. Yet, under questioning from me, what did we find? That after 3 attempts, he's still not got round to reading the Sharp report. The Sharp report, which actually reveals that the culture that existed then and allowed these terrible things to happen is still the same today. This report is suppressed by the government. I'm not allowed to have an official copy. It reveals such things as people who had put aside protecting young people, young vulnerable people at school, for the good name of a school, were then allowed to be elected as a jurat. Indeed, on the same theme, the said jurat was actually seconded by a former education president. How more worrying could it get? And yet the Chief Minister hasn't read this report. It's been out since 1999. We're now in 2012. The state media. Now there's a subject that most people would say fits neatly into the theme of absurdity. Now it just so happens that I've got a leaked letter here. It's a letter that's been leaked to me. I don't know who by, but it's addressed to the chairman of the Chairman's Committee of the States, and it's a letter from Mr. Chris Bright, the editor of the Jersey Evening Post. Now, what is this letter about? Well, a lot of it's about me, and in my opinion, it's a misrepresentation of facts. But that's my opinion. In this letter, Mr. Bright complains that he feels I have a grudge against the Jersey Evening Post. Now, I suppose, in fairness, one could say that when you've had to take the Jersey Evening Post to court and lost a case, you might feel a grudge, particularly when you've discovered after that court case that one of the jurats who was allowed to sit on the case by the bailiff's office was actually a long-standing personal friend of a director of the Gittel Group, who owns the Jersey Evening Post. But that's for another Bald Truth review. I have no grudge against the Jersey Evening Post. What I do have a problem with is media, mainstream media, state media, who don't represent the true facts. Now, we demonstrated the problem here with the scrutiny review into the finances of Operation Rectangle and the appallingly inaccurate reporting. Reporting it basically trashed the reputation of Graham Power and Lenny Harper. It's fair to say that that scrutiny review completely blew out of the water the absolute nonsense that was put round by the state media. What is my problem with the state media? Well, as I say, all I want is some consistency. Like most people, I would say that the only consistent, transparent, and fully fair and balanced media around today are citizens' media. And perhaps that's why so many people feel threatened about it. The media is not meant to be a mouthpiece for the establishment, and with just one newspaper in the island and limited television and radio, that has got to be a very serious issue. Which is why the scrutiny panel and others in the States believe that we should have a media ombudsman to protect standards. Is raising such concerns a grudge? No, it's not, is it? It's about ensuring fairness. Now I'm going to end on a subject which some viewers might think doesn't fit in with all of this, because I want to talk briefly about the events of 1769, September the 28th to be precise. Now what happened then, which was basically a sort of mini revolution in Jersey, when ordinary working people finally rose up and said they'd had enough of a corrupt regime. They wanted their say, they wanted democracy. And of course the person who was really at the forefront of all this in 1769, Tom Grouchy, just as with the events themselves, has almost been airbrushed out of the history books over the 250 odd years since. Now, thanks to local historian Mike Dunn, people have become more aware of this recently, and to try and bring this fully into the public consciousness so we do understand our history, I've this week lodged a proposition seeking that the states fully recognise September the 28th as Reform Day. Not only that, but that we also do some research into what was actually obliterated, scribbled out of the history books following the brave actions of those people all those years ago. Because what 1769 says to us, and the way this has been, as I say, eradicated almost from history, points out that This theme of the victors writing history, 1984 style almost, rewriting of history, still goes on today. Tom Grushy and his friends back in 1769 were fighting for democracy and transparency. We're still fighting that battle today. So look out for that. It should be up on the State's website next week. And I'll leave you there and hope to see you again soon for some more Bald Truth, for some more experiences in the twilight zone that is the State's Chamber.